Okay, I think we've okay, right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the March 2023 Your Overseas Home virtual event. My name is Christopher Nye, and I'm Senior Editor at the Overseas Home, at Your Overseas Home and Portugal Property Guides. I personally and Portugal Property Guides have been helping customers relocate and buy abroad for pretty much 20 years now via our online guides, hopefully inspirational newsletters, our property mailers, and also, of course, by connecting you directly with trusted experts to support you with your purchase. So it's great to have you with us today, whether you are with us live or catching up on demand. And our goal always in these things is to help you buy safely. And that's why we entitled this seminar, How to Buy Safely and Securely in Portugal. I am joined by three property experts who will share their knowledge and advice on buying in Portugal. Two of them are in Portugal, and myself and Jack from Smart are in the UK. So firstly, we're going to hear from Jack Wiggs from Smart Currency Exchange, who's just going to introduce himself. And then we'll hear from David Rowat, who's the estate agent from Olive Homes down on the Algarve. And then we'll hear from our lawyer, Joanna Mestre from Mac Law, and she is in Lisbon. Lucky Joanna.
Today so, I'm in Malta, Chris. I'm much better today.
Oh, really? Yes. Before we get started, I'd like to invite each of our experts just to introduce themselves and share with you a quick overview of their business and the services they offer you. So, Jack, over to you first.
Yeah, thanks, Chris, and thanks everybody for attending today. Welcome to Your Overseas Home. As Chris said, my name's Jack, and I work at Smart Currency Exchange. I've been helping property buyers buy property for about 6 years now. We consider ourselves the trusted voice in foreign exchange to help people effectively manage their budgets and their currency risk throughout their buying journey. Main thing we focus on, as I mentioned, is currency risk. So if you think about buying in Portugal, you've normally got a few months between making an offer and having an offer completed and go through picking up the keys. And our job is in between that time is to help manage your currency exchange, because there is going to be a lot of volatility. There's going to be a lot of change to exchange rates, and our job is to guide you through that and hold your hand through that. Best time to get in contact with us is before viewing trips. So plenty of notice so we can start working with you on your plans and with your budgets ahead of time, so that you've got a plan set in place if you are lucky enough to have an offer accepted. I said I've been doing this for about 6 years now, so mainly focused on properties, people helping people buying property abroad, and us helping navigate all the hurdles of a typical property purchase over in Portugal.
Excellent. Right. So if we could hear from David.
Okay, thanks, Chris. So yeah, David Rowat. I run a company called olivehomes.com, and we are effectively a real estate company based in Portugal. We mainly specialize in the Algarve, although I have personally worked all through Portugal. So when people are listening now, if they've got an interest in any area of Portugal, then I can normally help. Even if I can't help personally, I can advise as to what would be the next best step for people. Basically, we offer a complete service for clients who come and look at property in Portugal. So we would receive you and show you the areas. First of all, if you want to talk about schools, or if you're looking to relocate, if it's a holiday home or you're renting. So it's not just a case of taking people to a property and saying, what do you think? You start really from a sort of fact-finding position, establishing what people want, showing the different locations, even though, for example, the Algarve has fantastic different options, and all the cities and towns vary considerably. So we start with the different locations, then we'd look at the properties, be it villas, apartments. Then when we find what you're looking for, we'll help with the negotiation, help reserve the property, introduce you to trusted lawyers, furniture suppliers, surveyors, everything you need. And so it's a complete sort of A to Z, a complete service for everybody looking at a property in Portugal. And also, yeah, you know, personally, I don't like to let people down, and that's how I sort of run the company with my team, that we take care of you, look after your nest egg. You've probably been dreaming about doing this for a number of years. And so we like to make sure we're the happy people at the end that make it all come true for you. So that's a little bit about ourselves.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much, David. And Joanna.
Hi, I'm Joanna. I'm a lawyer, a Portuguese lawyer, and also a partner at Matt Law. Matt Law is a real estate law firm. Let's say that we focus our practice mainly on real estate transactions and advising people willing to invest and relocate to Portugal. We have clients, only investors, so they have their assets or holiday or investment properties here. And we have clients, as I believe many of you would be willing to move to Portugal on a more permanent or let's say a temporary basis. So our areas will cover everything that is necessary, of course legally, to assist the clients completing safe and secure transactions, property transactions, both from a seller's and buyer's perspective. And of course, taxation related to real estate, taxation related to relocation to Portugal, all the immigration matters and rules that, well, especially after Brexit, became more and more important for British nationals. We are in the market. Well, of course, Matt Law exists since 2017, but we took on the experience and also the clientele and the networking of our founding partner, Maria. And we have offices currently in Lisbon and in the Algarve. So we are able to cover the entire Portuguese territory, the islands inclusive, when needed. Of course, we don't have facilities, offices there. But nowadays, a significant part of our job is done remotely. So we are happy to assist clients who can invest in Portugal without even coming here if needed. And well, hopefully this webinar will be useful to you, and I'm at your entire disposal.
Thank you very much. Fabulous. Now we're on a first name basis. I'm going to take viewers along a rough kind of journey towards buying their property. So please throw your questions into the Q&A tab below, and we'll answer them as we go along. We hope to answer as many queries as we can, but if we don't get round to them, please don't worry. All our exhibitors are in the hall, in the exhibition hall. So you can go and they're there all day, so you can go and chat with them, get all your questions answered, and I hope make those connections for afterwards. If you feel you missed anything, you can watch all this on demand afterwards. Okay, so enough from me. In the absence of any questions in the meantime, I'm going to throw a few questions at Jack. So, Jack, different transfer options. Now tell me, you know, we've all got money at the airport before, but how is this different? What are my options when I'm buying a property?
Yeah, we've all got money. We've all got money from the airports and seen exchange rates presented to us previously. The difference with that is that if exchange rates change, it's going to make a very small difference to the amount of holiday money that you're going to take away with you. When you scale that upwards and you're looking at your large value transactions, which I'm sure everyone on this meeting will be doing, it can make a big difference. If I take a £250,000 budget, just as an example, then over a 3-month window, which is normal sort of typical buying journey, we can expect to see around 5% change in currency exchange. So for yourself, if you're buying a property for £250,000, that's a change of about £12,500 the property could cost you with exchange rate volatility. So that for most of our clients is a real concern. It's a real worry, not knowing how much the property is actually going to cost you at the time you look to transact. So our job here is to help explain the options to you about how we can potentially manage that. And each client is completely unique with what they're looking to do and how they're looking to manage it. So our job is to give you the tools and the information to make a more informed decision on how best to do that based on your personal circumstances. Transfer options. So you can utilize something called a forward contract. So a forward contract locks an exchange rate in for a particular window of time. So if you're choosing a particular buying journey in Portugal, for example, you're looking at that 3 months, you can lock a forward contract in from the day that you have your offer accepted all the way through to your completion. How a forward contract works is that you pay a deposit to us to lock the rate in, but your rate is then secured for the duration of your completion period. So if you block in your £250,000 budget, your exchange rate is the same, your sterling amount is the same, and your euro amount that you've bought is also the same. So it gives you peace of mind that the exchange rate isn't going to change on a minute-by-minute basis, and you can then plan and budget ahead for your completion coming up in the next couple of months. That's a very risk-averse option. Now, we can do part of your budget on a forward contract. So if you think about, again, a budget of 250,000, you could lock in half of that, so 125,000. And that means that half of your budget is secured. You've taken the risk away from half, but it still means you've got half left over, which is exposed to market conditions. So with that half, we can help target exchange rates for you. We can see what happens nearer the time when your completion is getting a bit closer. But there is obviously a gamble, a risk involved there, because exchange rates, as I say, can change by up to 5% in a 3-month window typically. And of course, you can do nothing. As much as we recommend and we guide clients away from this, you can do nothing with your currency exchange, and you can look nearer your completion to then manage your currency. Or what you can do to better that is you can speak to us in advance, and we can look to put exchange rates in place for you. So if the rates do improve, then we notify you or we buy automatically for you. Now, that is very high risk, but clients do sometimes like to take a gamble on these things. But they're the 3 main transfer options in terms of buying property.
Okay. We've had a question in, and it's more of a general one, but I'm going to ask you in relation to currency. How easy is it to buy a property, and what are the main pitfalls in doing so? So in regards to property, is it a simple process basically?
Yeah, it's a simple process for us managing currency for a property. So steps you need to take is you need to register with Smart Currency. So it's just where we take some basic information from you to satisfy our regulations. You then be assigned an account manager who will reach out to you, normally at a designated appointment slot, and they'll walk you through the options and understand your personal circumstances in a bit more detail. And at that point there, if you choose to, you can then look to buy your currency or make a plan to buy currency at a later date. So it's very straightforward. Common pitfalls, as I mentioned, is currency risk. So unfortunately, it seems to be naivety for a lot of clients that don't know that we exist, or know that we exist far too late on, or think they need to speak to us at the last minute. And it's then coming to ourselves after exchange rates have changed, and suddenly the amount of pounds they thought they were spending, or the pounds they set aside for this purchase, has now changed drastically, and it's made it a lot more expensive, and in some cases unaffordable to then go ahead with the purchase. And that's the biggest pitfall that we see with clients.
Yeah, because I can imagine it's a big risk if you're buying a lovely €500,000 property on the Algarve, and then you're spending the next few weeks checking the exchange rate. Okay, so how far in advance can I book a forward contract?
Yeah, you can do it anywhere up to 12 months time. So yeah, as I said, each client is completely unique. So the idea of the account manager is to work out what specifically they need to do for you and how long you'd need to lock an exchange rate in for. Typically with property buyers, it's normally sort of 3 to 6 months, but we can do it for up to 12 months. So there is more flexibility there if necessary.
Okay, now the public, and indeed one of our questioners, has noticed that there is a bit of trouble in the banking world at the moment. We had Silicon Valley Bank collapse, Credit Suisse in trouble. Yeah. UK banks protect us up to 85,000 if the bank collapses. But what about you? I mean, suppose something disastrous goes wrong mid-purchase. How is our money protected?
Yeah, so we've been going for about 20 years now. So I'd like to think that we're very secure. You can obviously do your own research into that. But if anything did happen to ourselves, then when you're transferring money to us, the money is held in a ring-fenced, segregated bank account with Barclays. So if anything did happen to us in the interim that we were holding money for you, it is fully protected. So yeah, that's one of the benefits of using our services. As I said, we specialize in property, so security and safety has to be absolutely paramount for us. And so we have the measures in place to make sure that you are protected as a customer of ours. Okay,
and you are regulated by, or authorized by the Financial Conduct Authority, I understand.
Yes, we're authorized by the Financial Conduct Authority, which is absolutely pivotal for anybody that's moving a large sum of money or holding a large sum of money for you. And there is a register on the Financial Conduct Authority website where you can go and check us out and make sure that we are on there.
Okay, brilliant. Well, I'm sure we'll get more questions for you, but I think we'll we'll move on to our other panelists so they don't feel left out. So David, I have a few questions for you. Well, I suppose the first question is what's the market like at the moment? Are people taking offers? Yeah. Sorry.
Well, it's been strange the last few years, really. Obviously, since the pandemic started, if you go back to then everybody expected that to cause, you know, tidal waves of sort of depression and no movement with the properties and everything, you know, in the market declining and everything. But since then, everything's gone a little bit crazy in Portugal. So the last 2 years, 2.5 years, we've seen sort of huge demand, low supply because people don't want to sell. The developers, while they're trying to catch up and release new properties, people are still buying them. So nothing's really changed. And at the moment, still a sort of seller's market, and prices are still continuing to go up. Now, strangely, it seems as the world's problems increase, people seem to be getting sick of it. And I think with the politics in the UK, the politics in America, people get sick of or fed up of listening to that or reading about that every single day. And that keeps pushing more and more clients to come here, either to buy a holiday home for, you know, visiting 3 or 4 times a year, to come here up to 6 months of the year, or to relocate and move here full time, which involves, you know, we found ourselves in the last year or so spending more time with clients, as I say, showing the schools, talking to people about employment options, and because people are had enough and they're relocating, bringing their family over. So the market's still very, very strong. There's been a few changes now with different laws and regulations with regards to the golden visa, which people may have heard about. So the government are trying to make changes to actually slow the market and dampen it a little bit, which is sensible because we'd all rather have long-term growth than, you know, boom and bust. So, but at the moment, the inquiries since the turn of the year have been sort of coming in regularly. We've got clients out all the time. We're non-stop, and so still a very positive time to be buying a property in Portugal. And fundamentally, the massive change that's happened here again over the last sort of 12 months or so is the North American market. And that is, I was out last night with my family into a typical Portuguese restaurant surrounded by Americans and Canadians talking about their holiday they're on now and everything. So that is a massive market. So if you look at the population of America, for example, is 300 million. You just take 1% of disgruntled Americans, that's 3 million, looking at properties here. So, and the population of Portugal is sort of 10.5 million. So it's really fueling the market when probably the rest of Europe are sort of double checking their situation. You know, what risks have we got? Interest rates going up. So whilst some parts of the world are maybe suffering from the world's problems, other parts are not, and are just continuing to purchase. So the market here is buoyant, and it's no longer just sort of Europeans. It's a real global marketplace now for Portugal. I think everybody's found out at last that it's exactly where they want to be.
Okay, yeah, I was in Lisbon last weekend, and I have to say, I heard a lot of American voices, but you know, lots of French people as well, and lots of people. And can I just point out that rare for a capital city, the Portuguese are so friendly. Go to Rome and everyone's horrible. Go to Paris, everyone's rioting and horrible. Lisbon, everyone was so nice. There really is a warm welcome for us there.
Well, I think,
sorry.
Yeah, no, I think people, we hear all the stories when we're in the UK, for example, of sort of the amanhã or mañana, that sort of approach where things take their time to get sorted, and sometimes we come out here and we live here and we expect this to be done on a Sunday, or we expect that to be done. But actually, when you spend more time here, you love everything about the friendliness of the Portuguese people, the culture, the fact that the weekends are really, or Sundays especially, more for family and pleasure and relaxing. And, they actually have a proper lunch, because it's important for your health to go and have a proper lunch with fresh fish and vegetables. And, and I've been brought up in Bristol, for example, like running around, sandwich for lunch, dash here, dash there. Whereas when you do come to Portugal and you see the people and you learn about the culture, and you start to think, actually, this is the correct way to live our lives, and they are very friendly, and it's a lovely place to visit.
Okay, so let's get down to brass tacks. We would hope that our viewers by the end of the day will be prepared for ready for a viewing trip. They've got all their questions answered. So how would you prepare for your viewing trip out to come and see you and to view properties?
Well, basically, I'd get in touch with us, relatively quickly as soon as you like, and say, look, we're thinking of coming out to Portugal. These are the dates. Can you sort of pencil us in for a few days, and we can arrange that. Then we can start a dialogue and say, well, what is it you're after? Which parts of the Algarve have you been before? If you haven't been before, we can take you all around the Algarve, because as I sort of mentioned before, it's a little like a funnel process. People start not knowing anything, and hopefully more information, and then they're in a situation where they can make a decision. They can come on a journey with us, literally, and see the different areas, see which suits them. They might want Albufeira, which is more of a party place. They may want Villa Moura, which is a little bit more sophisticated. So everything's got, or down on the west if they like surfing. So every area's got different sort of lifestyle benefits for people. So we can go on that journey with the clients. Try to fine tune which location they're after. Then we need to be checking budgets and looking at, what is it you're after, an apartment or a villa. Then just to stay open-minded, really, and just say, right, out you come. And then, because what happens is we've got properties on our website, we've got properties we can share with other agencies. The market here is rarely exclusive, so it's becoming more and more a case where different agencies share with other agencies. So it's following the American model a little bit, is in that if you've contacted us and you're happy dealing with us, we can go and find anything you want, rather than the client having to speak to 10 different agencies to find everything on the market. You choose one, and then we can help find everything they need. So then basically we would be talking, have a plan of action, and then that's it really in terms of preparing. Sort out the currency if that's what you want to do. Also, if you're thinking of taking an overseas mortgage here, then really recommend you get that prepared and agreed in principle before you come. We can recommend the banks to speak to, or a mortgage broker, depending on your circumstances as to what's best. But you really want to come out in a position where you have the mortgage agreed in principle. So if you do find the property you like, you can negotiate strongly, almost from a cash, like you've got cash point of view, but the vendor knows there's going to be no delay, because mortgages can take usually sort of 2 months really to get it all fully approved. The banks will say 4 weeks, but usually takes a little bit longer. So it's best to just get the wheels in motion a little bit. It doesn't need to be a fully approved mortgage, but just a sort of agreement in principle that the bank would assist you at this level. And then when you're looking for the property and we say, right, we're moving ahead, we try to negotiate as best we can. And it's much better to say the client's already got a mortgage and it's approved in principle. And then the vendor, the owner, knows that this is a serious client and we can try to get the best deal possible for the clients. So speak to us, get a plan of action. We can look at the areas, what they're after, keep an open mind, and get the mortgage approved if possible.
And when they look at properties online, what should they be allowing for buying costs?
So as a rough rule of thumb, I always say 10%. It's rarely that high. Sometimes it can come out as a total of sort of 8 or 9%, and that includes the lawyer's fees, the government fees, land registry. So everything all added together would be if you budget 10%, and then you'll have a bit of loose change at the end to be, you're never exceeding that. But usually if you find somewhere, then we can write down exactly what your buying costs are. So it might, it comes out, look, it's 7.2% exactly, but usually we say, look, just budget 10%, and then you know where you stand.
And when making an offer, is it normal to offer a little bit below the asking price?
Yeah, always. Well, if it's brand new and it's being built by a developer, usually there's no flexibility. The developer will say, I'm not negotiating, these are the fixed prices. I'm not doing it for one person because then I've got to do it for another. So usually if it's a brand new development, the prices are fixed. If it's a private individual, then yes, you obviously, in theory, everything's negotiable. Because the market's still quite heavily weighted towards the seller at the moment, because the supply is less and the demand's high, then we don't have so much power and strength when we're negotiating, but we usually try to get something off the price. Obviously, each negotiation is different, and so it's very difficult to do a general rule of thumb, but really allow maybe 1 or 2%, but that's it. It's not a lot. What usually now is the list price is what people should expect. So if you were looking at it, if you had a budget of 500,000 euros, for example, you should look at properties for 500,000 euros. You might be tempted to look at 550, but if you're looking online, but you couldn't assume that you were going to get that for 500. It's just not the way it is.
Okay. So I've come over there. I've looked at the properties. I've decided which one I like. What happens next? When is there a reservation deposit, or what's the process when I've made the offer and it's been accepted?
Okay, so what we do with our clients and is basically if I've got a client and they say, okay, David, we like this property, we'd now like to go ahead. So I would speak to the owner and everything's all agreed now. So the price is agreed. And so then what we do is we would then, if the clients already have their own lawyers, that's fine, no problem. If they don't have a firm of lawyers, then we would recommend a firm of lawyers like Joanna, for example. And we would take the clients to Joanna if they're still here. Joanna would have a meeting with them and explain everything. Then what we'd ask the clients to do is pay a deposit of some sort into the lawyer's bank account. Okay, we normally do a sum of 6,000 euros, which historically came from being 5,000 pounds, and now it's stuck at 6,000 euros, which is a gentleman's agreement. So that literally is a transfer from the clients, from their bank account to a firm of lawyers. Not anywhere else, not to us, and definitely not to the vendor, but to the firm of lawyers. And that shows, that's a sort of sign of commitment that I can then show the proof of that to the vendor, for the vendor, which is the owner, to take the property off the market. Okay, you don't have to do that. That's not sort of a condition of going ahead. But what it does is allows us as a real estate company to allow both parties the satisfaction that this is a serious transaction, and then the vendor will take it off the market. Otherwise, if we don't do that, then there's a risk that he carries on showing it to other people, and you go back on the plane, you think you're happy and you've secured a property, and then it could be lost or gazumped or something like that. So by making that transfer to the firm of lawyers who you're using, that's what we call the reservation deposit, which is 6,000 euros. And then that allows us to take it off the market and move on to the next stage. After that, then the lawyers start doing their work, and they move to the second stage, which is called a promissory contract, which is like an exchange back home, where you'd normally put down 10 or 20% deposit of the property. At that stage, there's no going back without penalties. And then you have the deed or completion at the end. So there's 3 stages: reservation deposit, promissory contract, and the deed. Okay,
fantastic. Right, thank you for that. We're now going to turn to Joanna, and we've heard a bit about the legal process. Is that when would be the first time we would contact you? Should we be contacting you? Well, we've already contacted you really via the show, but what would be the preliminary discussions we would have with you before coming out on a viewing trip?
Well, I would say, along with all the other panelists, David and Jack, that the sooner you have your team of specialists organized, and you've appointed your estate agents, you've chosen your FX company and your lawyers, the better, because you need to manage, as David just said, the market is going a bit crazy. And for those who have done their homework, it's, the chances of getting a right property and completing safely and in not losing the properties they've chosen increase significantly. So it's very common for us to have initial or introduction meetings with clients where we explain the process in a bit more in a bit more detail, because no process is the same. We have clients buying off plan, we have clients buying new properties from developers, we have clients buying used properties from private owners, we have clients looking for plots of land somewhere in the country to develop their own projects. So all of this and the client's expectations, timelines, financing will impact the process as well as your lawyer's work. For example, if you decide to finance the purchase through an overseas mortgage, we will necessarily have to be empowered to complete both the property transaction and the financing, because they will likely be completed at the same time. We can't complete one without the other, and vice versa. So we will have to include in our powers of attorney, specific terms to be able to complete the funding, for example, and to having an idea of how much you will raise on an overseas mortgage is important. So we also include that in our terms. The sooner the better, Chris, definitely. And it doesn't mean that in one conversation or in one meeting you'll have all the information, because it's very normal that the clients start looking for a plot of land and then they realize all the complication, and then they just say, no, Joanna, we'll go for a finished new property, or one that just needs a bit of renovation. So that is really a teamwork. So it's important that you have your specialist team and you have the possibility of clarifying your queries by email, by call, Zoom meetings. So you don't need to come here personally. But of course, if you do come for visits and to property showing, it's advisable, that as you are here, to book an appointment so we can arrange as much as possible at an early stage.
Now, we've talked a bit about the buying process, but I've had two questions on the subject of golden visas. Let's just bring that subject in. Golden visa has ended. It was going to end anyway on the Algarve. It ended anyway on the Algarve and in Lisbon and Porto. But could you tell us, we've had two questions really. One is from a family of four looking to relocate, still at working age, would be cash buyers. With the golden visa seemingly gone, what is a recommended entry route?
Mm-hmm.
And Adam's question is basically the same. What other options are there?
The golden visa, I would say that if these families are on a working age, they're planning to move here permanently and along with their children, they do not need a golden visa, okay? The benefit of the golden visa, and if clients bear in mind that the golden visa, it's a residence permit for investors. So if you think an investor, daily routine or a yearly routine, it's someone that makes an investment and doesn't want necessarily to be tightened or limited on the move and travel facilities to that investment. So it's buying a property here, and the golden visa allows that person and their family, of course, to stay in Portugal a very short period, a minimum period of stay of 2 weeks. Okay, so of course they can stay longer, but the minimum staying requirements are very short because this is just a permit for an investor. It's not for someone, or it's not necessarily for someone willing to relocate here on a permanently basis. And if this is your case, I wouldn't advise going through the golden visa route because it's more expensive. It's not necessarily more expedited, so faster than the other routes. And you will be, as you just said, limited to the properties that you are able to invest in order to use the real estate investment to apply for the golden visa. The golden visa didn't end in total for the coastal area, including Lisbon and in the Algarve. There are some properties, I'm talking about real estate only, in investments. There are some properties that are still eligible for a golden visa. However, the properties for habitation, the housing, those that Portuguese families also need, those will not be available on the coastal area and the more populated cities like Lisbon and Oporto, and also the Algarve region. However, there are some areas in these regions that are allowed to have those properties. And about the end of the program, it's not yet a definite answer if it will end in 100%, if it will be reshaped, redesigned in order to be narrowed to non-real estate investments. We don't know yet. It's a big, big question mark. It's likely that will terminate, but we don't know if the government will approve something similar or not. So I don't want to be pessimistic nor super optimistic. So at the moment, we are still submitting some applications, but always bearing in mind that the program may suffer significant amendments. Going and answering the question of this family. If you are looking to work from Portugal, and then you have two options. You have your jobs that allow you to work remotely. For example, you are what we call digital nomads or remote workers. You can stay in Portugal, live here, and work for the US, the UK, for anywhere in the world. You can come to Portugal now under a digital nomads visa on a permanent basis. So to stay here more than 12 months, or on a short-term basis, which means if you want to just have an experience of Portugal and stay here for 8-9 months, you are not a tourist. You need a residence, but you are not staying for 1 or more years. Both these visas, especially for the long term residency, they are allowed to family reunification. So you can bring your relatives, your spouses and your children underage, or even parents if they are financially dependent on you, okay? So these visas are more traditional visas. They will require you effectively stay in Portugal. You have to prove that you can provide and render work remotely abroad. If you're looking to work in Portugal, then you'll have employment visas. Nowadays, you can also have a very interesting visa, which came to facilitate the logistics of moving to Portugal and finding work here, which is just a permission to come and look for a job for a few months. You are not coming to work, but you are allowed to look for a job. So it's a kind of a pre-visa step to facilitate the process. But it's really advisable that you speak to your lawyer, and we will assess, considering the family needs, what is the best visa for you, and not necessarily sell you a golden visa just because it's more trendy or more.
Yes.
Yes.
Now, I think most, well, it's kind of half and half these days between people buying a holiday home and people looking to relocate permanently, I think, amongst people buying in Portugal. So we've had a question from Claire, which was going in a direction I was going anyway, which is about holiday homes. She says, do I need any visa to buy a property and rent it out a little bit for other people? So she'll be coming a couple of times a year and she'll rent it out a little bit as well. So so could you cover any visa implications there?
There are no, and this is really important. Portugal welcomes any investment, and the visa and all the immigration matters are only applicable for people willing to move to Portugal. It's a matter of relocation, of residency here. No one needs a visa to buy a property here, whether it's for holiday. You are allowed in most of several countries have visa exemptions with Portugal for tourism purposes. For example, UK and US citizens do not need a touristic visa, at least for now, to enter and stay here up to 90 days to enjoy the country. But, and this is really, really important, anyone can invest in Portugal and anyone can capitalize their investment here, meaning by a permanent or a long-term rental or a short-term rental basis, okay? In the short term, like clients like Claire, who want to combine a personal family use with a bit of a rental also to offset the costs of maintaining the property, it is possible to rent it. Nowadays, it's also being discussed, like in this package of measures that the government is discussing right now, if properties will be able to be put on the what we call the Airbnb market, you know, the short-term or touristic rental markets. The government is planning to eventually suspend new licenses, or if not suspend new licenses, to incentivize through taxation measures to create more incentives for people to rent their properties on the rental market and have properties available for Portuguese or for people living in Portugal, because we have a small country, not so much of supply and in terms of properties. And what is happening is the tourism and the touristic market is taking several properties out of the housing market. So the government is trying to create a combination. I don't think the suspension is the best route. Really, the taxation is a good way of, you know, moving and behaving or shaping people's behavior. But as of today, it is possible to have a property here without any visa requirements, coming here just for a holiday, and even as a non-resident. So the client will be in the US, in Canada, in the UK, and having their property here, you know, being capitalized with a long or short-term rental. In that case, it's advisable, of course, to have a team of property managers, lawyers, accountants to deal with all the matters here in person, like rental contracts, guests, check-ins and check-outs, of course. But there are lots of companies, and usually the real estate agents who will assisted with the purchase will also be willing to provide those services.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Now we haven't heard from David for a while, and we're running out of time. So I suppose my question would be, what's new in property? Are people buying villas? Are people buying apartments? Is there much building going on? Is it more about new builds or villas, or both?
Well, there is more new construction going on than there has probably in the 20 years since I've been here. So it takes a while for, you know, like I say, that the last 3 years have seen a big increase in prices. Demand's gone through the roof. And so it's taken a while, but the developers who probably owned pieces of land for 10 years plus have said, right, now's the time to build. But it takes a while for it to get through planning, which is another thing the government's looking at, is to speed up planning approvals. So there's lots of different things at the moment going ahead. And so the developers, there's a lot. So where I'm based in Villamora, there's probably about 12 different new developments being built. However, from those 12, they're already for sale, and most of them are 60, 70% sold. I love buying off-plan properties. Of course, there's a risk with buying off-plan properties, but if you get it right, sometimes it's quite an easy way to make money. But of course, you've got to balance everything up. So I'm not recommending that unless you want to do that. But you know, it's nice to be at the front of the queue, pick the unit, and then sell it. You know, buy it, but sell it and make some money. But the reality is, developers are building. So there's more being built now than there's ever been, as I say, in the last 20 years. But a lot of it's already been sold. Are people post-pandemic? People were not buying apartments. People wanted as much fresh air and space to be away from people as possible. So it certainly was more villas than apartments. But now I think everybody doesn't mind. And of course, with the push in property prices, what might have got a small villa now is like a 2 or 3 bedroom apartment, just because prices have gone up. So sometimes people realize that they can't necessarily afford to spend as much as they were going to on a bigger property, and so instead choose an apartment. But generally is the demand for everything's there, including plots of land, as sort of Joanna said before. You know, when the market's quiet, plots of land do not sell quickly. It's one of the more difficult things to sell when things are quiet. But when they're busy, everything's sold. Plots of land that I've driven past for years and years, thinking, I wonder why nobody sells that. Now there's a house being built on it. So, but it's important. I know it's about buying safely and securely, today's sort of presentation, and Joanna's the lawyer would be the person who really takes care of all the legal side of things. But one thing just to mention is when people do come out and they say, not sure if it's going to be a villa or an apartment, then or a piece of land, then part of my sort of background with sort of banking and everything is I try to just give the best advice for people to make sure that their money goes up in value as well, you know. So it's not, there's the legal side of making sure the owner is the owner, the debt's going to be covered when they take ownership and everything, but the really I do like to try and help people make money. And I think, as Joanna touched on as well, you know, sometimes people should stick to buying a villa in a recognized location or an apartment in a recognized location. Go out, enjoy Portugal for what it is. Go out, have a nice cup of coffee in the mornings, a croissant, enjoy the people, the beach, the scenery, and not embark on a housing project that is going to cause them stress and anxiety, and it might go wrong, you know, or to find an old mill up in the hills that they're going to refurbish and things like that. So don't, you know, I watch the Grand Designs program on TV, you know, 1 hour of stress. I'm watching it. I'm thinking these poor people after a project that's always gone over budget. They've always lost money. The builder's not turning up and everything. I think, oh gosh, whereas when always with clients, when we go on the journey, when we're showing properties and, you know, say to people, the single thing you've dreamed about in Portugal is the fresh air, the you know, walking along the beach, beautiful sunny weather all year round, everything like that. So come out, find a nice apartment or a nice villa. There's really not a lot to worry about if you follow the correct principles, and just enjoy that rather than get distracted by biting off more than you can chew, really. And just so really the traditional market's always been there, apartments and villas, that's still the same case. And if people want off plan, then there's a good choice now. And it's a nice way of buying something and enjoying sort of Christmas Eve rather than Christmas Day. You know, I always find Christmas Eve, you're all excited, you can't wait for it. Christmas Day, you know, and so buying off plan is a nice option. And there are good options now. If people feel they're going to retire or downsize in a couple of years, they just want to lock into something now, then they can do so with an off plan option.
Okay, brilliant. Well, we could talk for hours, but unfortunately, we don't have time. However, thank you for everyone, all our panelists. Now, we haven't even scratched the surface of this. So what I would advise people, firstly, if you want specific answers, to go and please meet Joanna and David and Jack on their individual stands, and then you can have a little one-to-one and have a chat. I have spoken to both Joanna and David in past webinars, and you can just go to Your Overseas Home, look at the on-demand, and you'll find that we cover the D7 visas, we cover more about golden visas, we cover more about how to buy and all the pitfalls. So we've got tons of information. Do please go and look that up. Visit their booths. We have another session at 1 o'clock, which is all about tax and moving to Portugal. But that's it for now. Thank you for joining us. Hope to see you later, and I hope to see that you will join our panelists on their stalls. Thank you, Jack, David, and Joanna.
Thanks, Chris.